Welcome into Believe in Commanders podcast, part of the Believe Network. Scott Jackson and usually Anthony Armstrong, the former Washington Redskins receiver. Anthony's out today, but our pleasure to bring in Ben Standig, longtime Commanders reporter with Substack, Last Man Standig. Find his podcast and all of his columns there. And big week ahead for the Commanders. Ben, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
If Anthony Armstrong is here, does that make me the Luke McCaffrey or Chris Moore of the episode? You got to find a guy to fill in.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. Yeah, you're the guy for us this week. Well, I'll tell you what, this game's obviously a few days away, Monday night, but a lot has happened to make it feel like it's even more important than it already was because this division suddenly appears to be wide open with the struggles of the Philadelphia Eagles that were on display on Thursday Night Football, losing to the Giants and young Jackson Dart. I just want to get your thoughts on that. We know about the, 20 years since somebody's gone back-to-back in this division, and suddenly it looks like we might be ready for that to happen again, where we're still in that streak, the way the Eagles are playing.
You know, it's funny, right? Like, the Kansas City Chiefs, don't have a great record right now, but we all logically say the same thing. You're an idiot if you write them off because we see this over and over again. They may have a bump or two, and then they're in the Super Bowl. I don't know if we give the Eagles the exact same level of respect. Maybe we should, considering what they have done, not just winning last year, but they've been a really good program for several years. But ignoring the past, and that's what the teams always tell us. So we're only bet now. They don't look like a team that is clearly they're not functioning on all cylinders. I mean, we've talked a bunch about how last year the Commanders did a good job, but there were a lot of breaks went their way. Well, they didn't have a game where they won without completing a pass in the second half, as the Eagles did a couple of weeks ago. And we know they lost a bunch of guys on defense and in the offseason, et cetera. So, yeah, they don't look like the same group. They obviously have plenty of talented players, but yeah, at the moment, they definitely do not look like a team ready to defend their Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, and again to see this Giants team who had just lost to New Orleans. Of course, they had the surprising win over the Chargers, but they were dominant last night in that game. And much like the last time the Eagles came out of a Super Bowl season, although they lost both coordinators that offseason. Now this year they just lost their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. It just seems like they're making it more challenging than it needs to be. I mean, it's just like you have this offense that worked really well for you last year. I get it. Their O-line's got some injuries, not playing to the same level. But it just looks like it's so complicated for them right now to like carry it for 60 minutes throughout a game. They have stretches where they look like themselves. It's just kind of strange to see a team have such an identity crisis suddenly that it was so successful just a season ago.
Yeah, their offense has definitely been up and down. I mean, look, Brian Johnson is on Washington's staff because the Eagles, after they had been to the Super Bowl, and then the next season things kind of fell apart, and they decided, hey, we're going to move on from Brian Johnson, and that led to him landing here, and I think Washington's pretty pleased with that. But yeah, here they are again. I mean, Sirianni, we talk about should we give the Eagles the same level of respect as we do the Chiefs? I don't think we need to do that with Sirianni versus, say, an Andy Reid or someone. I mean, it feels like such a volatile situation with him. But it was interesting. I was driving last night during the first half of the game, and as I was driving and listening to the game on somewhere, the analyst kept noting that because the Eagles are in shotgun on every play, that it makes it easier to identify if it's going to be a run or a pass based on where Saquon Barkley is. And then as the game was progressing, I see like Dan Orlovsky tweets a very similar type of comment. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily right or wrong, but it is to say that there's clearly some question about what their basic process was. Forget losing the game, but just like, functionality, what's going on. And look, as a Saquon Barkley fantasy owner, I mean, come on. What was that? That was terrible.
This is a fantasy football complaint here. Believe in Commanders podcast. So we'll get to the Commanders part of it here. Scott Jackson, Ben Standig from Substack, of course, longtime Commanders, Washington football, Redskin reporter. So the interesting part now is, again, Washington, look, they already felt like they needed to kind of get on a roll anyway. Monday's game's big. The Bears coming into town, but certainly even bigger because if you win it, there you are. You're on the same level with the Eagles in terms of record at this point. But you've been around this team this week. You were out in LA last week. Jaden Daniels, probably the first time I would say this year it felt like maybe there was a little bit of that 2024 Jaden magic on the field last week in Los Angeles, and certainly a lot of it was helped by Bill, right? The young rookie Bill Krosky-Merritt, but that throw before halftime, obviously to Luke McCaffrey, some of the scrambles, some of that big 3rd and 16 he hit to Jalen Lane. There just felt like some of that, and just kind of the swagger the team had, and obviously the exclamation point TD pass to Debo Samuel. But what did you notice last week? You were out there for the practice, and they were playing it along all week. Like, well, we'll see if he's ready, and we're going to give him the green light. And obviously, they did on that Friday. I think everybody knew he was going to play last week. But to kind of take me through that week, and if you felt like this team comes out of that with a bit of a bump going into Monday night.
Well, I mean, I'm with you on the Jaden part because, like, for me, and I wrote this last week, like, this is a perception versus reality game in that it doesn't really matter what they actually are, but if they lose, they're under 500 for the first time since
Right.
week 1 the previous year. And look, if the offense isn't crushing it, we can say, hey, Jaden's played 3 games and the offense has not looked like it did last year. Now, wouldn't even know if we definitively say that they have yet, but that's in part because no Terry McLaurin, no Noah Brown. I mean, Chris Moore is having to play. He played 75 snaps last 2 weeks, has 0 catches and dropped a touchdown. I'm not knocking Chris Moore. I'm saying this is kind of where they're having to sub guys in to make it fix. But I just thinking about this as you were mentioning some of the names, like you and I are NBA guys. When you see it sometimes an NBA team, like they've got a bunch of injuries or they're just built where they've got like 3 main guys and everybody else has to play a role. That's kind of what it was last week. You had Jaden Daniels passing, you had Bill running, and you had Debo catching. And Debo caught more than half of Jaden Daniels' completions. Bill dominated the backfield touches, and obviously, Jaden, particularly as the game went along, just got more and more comfortable out there. And that last drive was really, to play on the LA thing was very cinematic. I mean, you got to go, you intercept the pass at the goal line. Sanders Hill does that, and then you go 99 yards to put the game away and cap it with a touchdown where all 3 of those guys, Daniels, Krosky, Merritt, and Samuel, were leading the charge. We're ignoring the offensive line in this discussion, but like in this analogy. But yeah, no, I mean, I think there was a really good signs there from a resolve perspective from some of those individuals. But again, week over week, we have not seen them win 2 games in a row this year. So is that sustainable? That's the question, whether Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown are back or not.
Yeah, and of course, as we sit here right now, Terry McLaurin was not part of the teamwork yesterday. He was working on the side as you watched him out there. Noah Brown is back. It just feels like McLaurin maybe isn't going to be this week. But again, you never know with the Monday night with the extra day whether he gets out there or not. But what would Noah Brown bring, do you think, if he came back? And obviously with Noah, a lot of this, you caveat it like, okay, he's back, but is he going to stay back? Because he has been a guy who, I think, let's be honest, the only reason he's available last year to the Commanders is because of the injury history in the other places, and that's why he becomes available at that point.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, at a base level, if he's able to play and he's, can jump into whether it's replacing Chris Moore or just giving you reps on the other side. Look, we saw what Noah Brown could do for this group last year. He could make some plays down the field. His big body was able to draw some pass interference penalties, that red zone size, and he's obviously a veteran piece. Again, whatever Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey are going to be, they're both at the beginning of their careers. I mean, Luke McCaffrey, great catch last week, full stop. It was the only catch he made, right? I mean, Jalen Lane has had some moments where, we can see where this is going, but we're not quite there yet. So if Noah Brown can play, and based on what I've seen in practice so far, he's been out there the 2 days that we were out there in uniform, yes, including yesterday in a padded practice. So I don't know that means he's playing. I definitely don't know what it means he's playing in week 7, 10, 12, but if he can play this week, it gives them another guy. Of course, we have to probably be realistic. He has not played since week 2. He had missed a bunch of time before that. So his level of rust could be a smidge higher than, or maybe more than a smidge higher than just a guy coming off of a 3-game absence. But when you're as thin as they are at receiver, having a guy like that come back might feel like, Art Monk returning from an injury relative to everything else that's going on out there.
Commanders are a 4.5-point favorite right now on FanDuel. Also, I thought it was interesting. So the anytime touchdown, normally last season when they were rolling, there'd be like minus money on a Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown. But that distinction goes to Bill Krosky Merritt this week. So FanDuel's like, yeah, we know you're going to win on this. He's minus 140 for an anytime touchdown, which is pretty wild to think about for this rookie, 7th round pick. It was really, if it wasn't for Abuka out there in Tampa, and maybe now Cam Scadaboo's entering the conversation as well. Maybe the guy who would be talking about for rookie of the year, but obviously a lot of football to be played. But what do you make of the Bill component? Because he's kind of adding, like, there's different dimensions to this offense from last year. Obviously, as you mentioned, you've not seen Terry McLaurin this year, really much after the injury. Then you have, Bill being inserted, and obviously the Debo aspect of it. It's even though it's a similar kind of cliff offense, there's also some diversity there with those two players bringing something that they did not have last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Bill part of this continues to be fascinating. It's not even just that he looks to be an electric player. And again, we have seen, we are the town that watched Timmy Smith crush in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl and then just never be heard from again, essentially. So, look, if Bill gets to the Super Bowl and does what Timmy Smith did and he never plays again, from a fan base perspective, I think people will be okay. But my point is to say, who knows where this is going? But right now, an incredibly fun player. He gets so much out of every carry. He's been incredibly dynamic in these runs. I mean, it's not just like, and that's the thing. Like when they made the move to trade Brian Robinson, it's not that Brian Robinson was a bad running back or anything. It's just that he was more of a singles doubles hitter, and they were looking for more. And Bill brings that. The funny thing is, to me, the biggest takeaway out of the game last week was, wait, this is the team that scored 28.5 points a game last year, 5th best in the league. But Debo Samuel is a clear upgrade in totality over whoever else they had running opposite McLaurin. And McLaurin has missed at least 2 games, and Jaden Daniels missed 2 games. And again, they would like to have Austin Eckler back. If they had to go with Brian Robinson, I'm sure they wouldn't be gnashing their teeth. But Bill is a completely different component than those guys were in the home run threat. And so you have Jaden Daniels, Bill, Debo, and Terry on the field at the same time at the pace we're kind of seeing from them, at the confidence that the team now seems to have more of in Bill. That is way more interesting. Again, no disrespect to way last year, way more interesting than anything else. And by the way, like the offensive line has played better since they made the lineup changes. I mean, Laramie Tunsil was not here a year ago. Just you look at him. So yeah, I mean, it feels like to this point it's just been like, hey, can we get through this week? Can we get through this week, especially with the injuries? And if they can get through the other side, wait a minute, where can this go? I think that's the part that's going to be really, really interesting.
Ben Standig here with us, Substack, Last Man Standing, Believe in Commanders podcast. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong out for this episode. Of course, we are part of the Believe Network, brought to you by FanDuel. And again, the Commanders a 4.5-point favorite on Monday night. Anthony always tells you guys about his data and the fact that he's been working with these great folks at Delete Me. And I'm with him, man. I'm jumping on this as well. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Do you get these things in the mail? Oh, by the way, we had a data breach. You might have been part of it. I get these things all the time, email-wise and in the mail. Well, data brokers make profit off your data. Your data is a commodity, and anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and harassment. But now you can protect it, and you can protect it with Delete Me. So as somebody, again, who's got these issues, that's why I'm going to Delete Me. They go there, they help you clean all this stuff out. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go join DeleteMe/Pro and use promo code PRO at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is go to DeleteMe.com/pro or enter code PRO at the checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/pro, code PRO. Again, joindeleteme.com/pro, code PRO. All right, Ben, let's flip it to the defense, because I still think that's probably the big concern for most fans, right? is this defense and what's going on there or what's not going on there. Very inconsistent. Played better at times against the Chargers, but when you go back and kind of maybe relook at the game like I did, I kind of feel like, as they like to call it out in LA and San Diego, chargering going on. There was some of that with some penalties that erased some big chunk plays and obviously the turnover, but those things happened. The defense took advantage. But I guess where's your state of mind right now and confidence on this defense? It's always interesting to hear Joe Witt, as you guys get to, for about 15 minutes every week, kind of go through what went wrong and sometimes really kind of put it on his players. I mean, he's not afraid to say, "Hey, these guys aren't communicating. Their eye discipline stinks. We got to do these things better." But what have you kind of taken away from this defense for 5 weeks?
Well, first of all, you mentioned Joe Witt. I love Joe Witt's press conferences. Like,
Yeah,
first of all, he doesn't just come in kicking and screaming, oh, God, I got to deal with the media and answer these nonsense
yeah, yeah,
questions. He comes in, okay, well, let me tell you what I think. And he gives you his dissertation as what happened, good or bad, in the previous game. And like you said, against Atlanta, he was not afraid. After Atlanta, he was not afraid to
yeah,
say that on certain plays, a couple guys were trying too hard. That's where he kept going with, everybody doesn't have to wear a cape, things like that, which also brings authenticity to when he then praises guys, as he did in this past game. He mentioned, I think it was Payne and Kinlaw and Trey Amos and Bobby Wagner, among others. I think mostly those guys who graded out very high in this game. But ultimately, you're right. I mean, the 3 games of the defense you could say looked good in totality were against 3 teams that have either poor offensive lines in general, or in the case of the Chargers, had a couple of injuries that really uh, hurt them. They looked far less impressive against Green Bay and Atlanta, their 2 losses. So what do we make of that? I mean, I think there were some good signs. Marshawn Lattimore had a pretty tidy game this last week. They didn't have near the amount of broken tackle issues. The communication seemed to be better on the back end. So I think all that is good. And then, even a little element like Jordan McGee had only played 12 snaps in the first 4 games, plays 12 this week, primarily on first down. And Joe Witt had told us several months prior that they wanted to use him last year in 4-3 looks when teams were showing 12 and 13 personnel, but because of his injuries, it just didn't really work out. And that may have led in part to some of their run defense issues. He was out there more. The Chargers are a team that use a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets. So he's got the athleticism. Like, he and Bobby Wagner, like, it's almost like if you could combine them right now, Bobby's brain and
right.
Jordan's body, you'd have an all-pro player. So he's still learning, but they always say in the NBA you can't teach height. Well, you can't teach athleticism to the degree that he has it. So if he's able to continue to grow, and there's confidence over there that he will, that's going to be just another piece to this puzzle. But we'll see. Again, the Bears made big improvements to their offensive line this offseason. It has played out. Caleb Williams, whatever we want to say about him, he's gotten better protection. So can Washington harass him enough to get him out of his rhythm and get Ben Johnson's game plan a little out of sync? I think that's probably the key to the game, I would say, on some level. And I can't definitively sit here and say it's going to happen, because we haven't seen it happen against a team that has a good line. The Bears have their own injuries, but by and large, they've been pretty good on the line.
What's weird about the Bears, they don't run the ball well at all, and maybe that's a DeAndre Swift issue. Remember Ben Johnson was part of a staff that ran DeAndre Swift out of Detroit, right, to upgrade. So it's kind of funny he's inherited him in this new job as well. So I'll be interested to see if they can run the ball. You mentioned that Caleb's done some better things too, and I would agree. I think he looks better. But when you really dive into their numbers, and I know you have, like, they're really good on third down. That's really what's been saving on both sides of the ball, third down offense, third down defense. Defensively, oh my God, they're like historically terrible against the run right now. And, this is obviously what the Commanders, probably need to lean into more right now, especially with the people they have available. I did notice, not to be Jim Cantore here, Ben, but it looks like it may be a little wet on Monday night, depending on how quickly that front moves through. Could be kind of and I don't know, do we know, is Bill a mutter? I don't know. I mean, I feel like these are things that we probably need to know. Is he a mutter? And if so, I guess that's good for Washington. If not, maybe it could be a tough night for him.
Now, I'm going to leave the Kramer impression on the bench here. No, it's a good. I mean, look, when you have a rookie and a rookie like him who was like completely an unknown, he wasn't some guy that was playing every week for Ohio State or USC or something. These
Right.
are important questions um, for sure. Yeah, the weather could be a factor. Um, Look, we had a pretty good deal last week in LA. I mean, they had the roof up, but even still, it was
Yeah.
very nice weather.
Perfect.
The Atlanta game the week before was under the dome. The games here have been pretty good. Even the Green Bay game was fine. So the weather has not been an issue so far. We'll see if it is in this game. At least we saw Jaden last year having to deal with some adverse conditions and be fine. Um, yeah, look, I think, and like here's the thing. Ultimately, this game, and you're sort of alluding to this with all the questions, like, well, if what do we know about this? What do we know about that? We know something about this team after 5 games, and part of that is because of what we saw last year. But we still have a lot of questions. There's just still
Right.
too many new pieces, too many young pieces, too many injuries, too many, just based on this year, inconsistencies to sit here and definitively say, okay, they're going to do X, Y, or Z in this game. If Jaden is on his game and is looks as efficient as he did, particularly as the game went along last week, then the offense should be fine. Debo continues to dominate. Bill, looks like he did a week ago or has looked this season, they should be good. But yeah, the other teams have their own stories, and the Bears are coming off a bye
Right.
week. And look, Ben Johnson, you know, obviously there's an interesting history here because he turned down
Oh
the
yeah.
interview with Washington mid-flight a couple years ago. But forget that. More recently, they beat his team last year in the playoffs. Now he can sit there
Embarrassing.
and say, "Hey, I got my offense got over 500 yards. I didn't commit all the turnovers." Fine, you still lost. And there were a lot of fair questions about why didn't he just keep running Jameer Gibbs play after play after play when it was clear Washington had no answer to him. So what does Ben Johnson do? I think we're all picturing he just spent his bye week holed up in some I don't know, maybe it's somewhere with Aaron Rodgers and ayahuasca. I'm kidding, I don't know. And like just going nuts on like
Yeah.
what creative plays can I make here?
Right.
How can I be tricky? I mean, even
Yep.
even the I forget who it was, but somebody yesterday, one of the players yesterday was like, "Hey, we know the trick plays are coming. We just have to be prepared." So who
Sure.
knows what that means? He's not going to give you. He's not going to run out there, so old Oklahoma Nebraska football and just run it and run it and run it. So um, it's really a fascinating matchup. But again, from the Washington perspective, can you win 2 in a row? Can
Right.
you be consistent? Because what's coming up after that at Dallas, at Kansas City on a
Yep.
Monday night, and then the schedule just keeps going. All these national TV games. So at some point, you got to do more than just win one, lose one. This would be at home on a Monday night stage with momentum. This would be a good time to get that first winning streak.
Ben Standig is with us, talking Commanders, Believe in Commanders podcast. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong out today, part of the Believe Network, and we are brought to you by FanDuel. Again, Commanders 4.5-point favorite going into this Monday night showdown against the Bears. And yeah, the rematch of the Hail Mary last year, and and obviously everybody, both sides don't really want to talk about the play, and you can't blame them. I mean, it's a completely different year, and really you go back and think about that game. The Commanders basically gift wrapped the game to Chicago. Kind of goofs around, played a terrible football game. Then Chicago tried to give it back by running, a defensive lineman, handoff on the goal line. I mean, there were so many weird twists and turns to that game. Then, of course, it ends on the crazy Hail Mary. And then later we see the video of Tyreek Stevenson, chatting it up with fans as the ball's being snapped instead of watching what's happening. So there's just so many weird things. And you laid on the Ben Johnson stuff really well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great soap opera. Monday Night Football, they're probably like, all right, how are we going to sort all this stuff? Because there's so many things to throw out there about this game. But at the end of it, you're right. I mean, this team, if you want to be consistent, this would be a good time to start that because it does get a lot tougher. Even though the Chiefs' record isn't great, their offense is better even without Rashee Rice, who will be back for that game. They're actually moving the ball a lot better overall, so that's going to be tough. And Dallas has been kind of the untold story of the early part of the NFC East, which is their offense is really lighting it up, even though this defense, is kind of, a mess right now. But if they can fix that, I mean, the way Dak's been playing, that's going to be a tough game. Washington always has their hands full when they played Dallas, as we saw last year. Even they had a split in the game when Dallas had nothing to play for. They had needed a last second touchdown pass from Mariota to beat them down there. So should be interesting. But I mean, for me, it just I look at this game, look at the keys. I mean, Washington's they got to be good with the football, can't turn it over, and that they have to be able to run the football and kind of get back to what they used to do. It's weird, even with that win, and I've talked about this a lot against the Chargers. They have not been that keep away team, right? Like, here's our script. We run more plays than you, even though, we don't have as many explosives. Now this year, it feels like they're getting more chunk plays at times, but they're not really maintaining the drives like we saw a season ago. Because again, the third down offense has not been great, as it wasn't even good in the win last week.
Yeah, I asked Dan Quinn the other day at his press conference. I was like, Dan, if I present you data that says a team is number one in the league in the rushing, in offensive rushing, but 28th in time of possession, how do you square that? And he's like, well, I mean, you mentioned third down, and you kind of mentioned that, and obviously, if you're getting a 20-yard play, it doesn't take off necessarily more time than if you run the ball 3 times and get 6 yards. So, yeah, I mean, they have not been that team, but maybe I think Dan Quinn said that his favorite moment of last game was that final drive, and I'm sure in part it was for that game, it sealed the win. But I also think it may have been like, hey, this is a reminder of where we were a year ago, where we just took the ball and we told Tressway, go have a snack. We won't need you today. And they did that repeatedly. So if they can keep doing, if they can get back into that, obviously last year was insane with how rare Tress punted at times. But obviously the fourth downs, they were a historic rate. But yeah, more of that. And also, it's going to make life better for the defense, because their defense, whatever we are saying about them, like any defense, they're better off if they are playing fewer minutes. And in their case, this is not a defense loaded with individual talent. This is a defense that's going to get by on scheme and grinding it out, and harder to do those things when you are tired. So keep the defense off the field and run the ball, control the clock is a definitely winning formula for where this team is at.
Yeah, and defenses anywhere will tell you they like to play with a lead so they can kind of tee off a little bit on the quarterback, and to see if that will help this group as well. I'm sure Von Miller would like to see more of that with those opportunities for more sacks. Ben Standig, the Last Man Standing on Substack, his podcast, his columns are there. Great insight on Deebo Samuel and the historic nature of the number 2 receiver with this franchise is a really good one that you have up there today, and how crazy it has been, who they think it's going to be going into the season, who it ends up being. And this year, it's a good thing they invested in that guy, because he's become the one guy while Terry McLaurin has been sidelined. Ben, as always, man, great talking. Appreciate your time. At Ben Standig on the X as well. You can give a follow there. Thanks for joining us here on Believe in Commanders podcast.
Scott, you rule. Thanks for having me as always.
All right. Thanks to all you for tuning in. Next time, it'll be me and Anthony Armstrong once again. And, of course, we are brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Believe Network. Until next time, thanks for joining us here on Believe in Commanders.